Welcome to Touch Base, everybody. Season 2 is off and running, and we have been walking through the various departments and the various companies that we have under the Madeira brand, and today is no different as we get a chance to introduce you to another new leader, for the podcast at least, but then also introduce you to another company, Select Title. And so joining me today is Spencer Cearley. He is the Executive Vice President of Operations for Select Title, and he, for various other reasons, including meetings, has come all the way from Houston to join us. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh. Full transparency. I'm not from Lubbock. I went to school out here, but I married a townie. So my wife is actually from Lubbock. So we came to the football game this weekend and saw some family, and then came to the offices and trying to make the best of a short trip. But we're glad to be here. Sunday reminds me of the why. Lubbock is a great place, and it can be a challenging place sometimes.
Yeah.
I think wind was blowing about 60 miles an hour. I don't think it was a full haboob, but it was a pretty good dust storm on Sunday. So,
living in Lubbock was that was the introduction for me to the word haboob. I didn't even know what that meant until it was and then you see it, you're like, that makes sense. That's what that is.
Monday and Tuesday have been beautiful.
Yeah.
50s and 60s. I think it's supposed to be 90 in Houston this week again.
Yeah, so I don't want your humidity. I'm not gonna lie.
I'll take it. I'll take a little grit in my teeth for that kind of weather. So.
That's funny. Well, you said something about your wife. That's a great introduction into this first question and kind of get to know you a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of your history, maybe even how you got to Select Title a little bit, and previous industry experience.
Yeah, for sure. Like I mentioned, I grew up in a little small town in North Texas, about an hour south of Wichita Falls. So, I say that I'm from West Texas, but I say that with a little bit of apprehension for real West Texas people. I did go to Tech out here, met my wife, and soon out of that, I moved straight to Houston out of school. I went through the energy commerce program at Texas Tech in the business school. Okay. And, I was from an oil and gas family, and kind of that was my track. It's like the mob, you can't, once you get in it, it's really, really hard to get out of it. So I'm in the title industry now. It's kind of like witness protection from the oil and gas biz. So I spent 15 years working for big, multinational oil companies. I worked for Shell for about 6 years, and then Australian mining company, BHP Billiton. And my career there, my education and degree out of Tech was to be a landman, mineral title landman, basically. And that role in big companies is kind of a commercial, center peg in the operational drilling, acquisition of rights process. So I spent a good chunk of my career doing land work, which I'll get to how that's kind of transferable to the real estate title side of things. So Shell and then BHP for another 7 years there. Did a little bit of different stuff there, more kind of commercially focused. I worked on the pipeline and midstream side of things for a while, moving oil and gas, via pipes kind of around from our wells in South Texas and in West Texas. And through that career, a lot of ups and downs, in the business. It's very cyclical in nature, not totally dissimilar from the real estate business, but big swings, right? Big, you're in grow mode, and then you're in cut mode, and kind of got, a little kind of beat up with the cycle, I would say, and just looking for something with a little more continuity, which kind of led me to exploring opportunities outside of the energy space. And really this kind of journey that I was on looking for career transition, very much impacted by kids, right? Yeah. Like you get kids and your perspective changes. We had our first daughter at the end of 2018. And then had our second daughter at the end of 2019. So, it was kind of like, all right, this oil and gas cycle, looking for a little more kind of continuity, but a place where, there was potential for growth, and shared some of these, entrepreneurial kind of vision on what.
Yeah.
And I'm a big culture guy too, and so finding a place, finding a home, a work home that aligned with my personal values and kind of respect for the human aspect of things was very impactful to me. And so, in talking to those guys, they were like, "Well, we just bought this title company." And I said, okay, title, real estate title. I bought a house at that point. I bought one house at that point in my life. So I kind of knew, in general, and my experience, my background experience in mineral title and real property, kind of aligned to that to some degree, but the nuts and bolts of the residential and commercial title business that I deal with now, complete and utter novice.
Yeah.
Like I didn't, by no means had a full understanding of what I was getting myself into to some degree, but I've done my best to get as familiar with the what it takes to buy a house and sell this. Ultimately it's an insurance product that we sell.
Yeah, and I want to get into that for sure, because I think that's what a lot of people do question in some cases, like you mentioned a second ago. Like, we have a little bit of experience with title companies, but at the same time, you really only see them when you're closing.
Yep.
And we'll get to that in a second. But you brought up kind of Select Title, a little bit of the timing there. Give me just a quick brief history on Select Title and how we got to Select Title being a part of the Madera brand.
Sure, absolutely. The founder of the company is a guy named Brad Elder. Brad's a local here in Lubbock. He started a title company before Select Title here in town called Title One.
Okay.
He ended up selling that company and purchased Select Title in Houston in 2016, kind of the end of 2016. It wasn't called Select Title, it was called Century Oaks Title at the time, and it was a little small. It was actually, I think, based in Angleton or Lake Jackson, somewhere kind of outside of Houston, and it was associated with the Dow Chemical Credit Union, the Employees Credit Union for Dow Chemical. So nothing in any form or fashion like what we do now at Select. I mean, we have grown, leaps and bounds since then, and opened bunches and bunches of offices, and that's the credit to Brad and those folks. So Brad, kind of built the company, built out the team, kind of through, 2017, all the way kind of, until really where we are today. The Madera kind of partnership that and structure we have now, that happened at the end of 2020, which is kind of when I started talking to the team over there. And really the relationship with Madera, it was a super unique opportunity in that, you take this, very large multifamily apartment owner and operator, and they identified this opportunity. And talking to Brad is like, look, there's a lot of synergies in our business, right? Like, we buy and sell properties all the time, big commercial properties, hundreds of millions of dollars are transacting back and forth, and that's a lot of title insurance. That costs a lot of money, right? So one, there's an advantage to integrating those services, right? And that many of their other businesses, they're doing the same thing.
Oh yeah, there's integrations across the Madera companies everywhere.
But it makes total sense, and so that's where they identified the opportunity to come in and take an ownership in it. And the exciting thing, for us at Select is, okay, you can have owners of a company and they're just kind of like, this is, you guys do what you do, you make money, great, we'll cash those checks. But really the opportunity that has been so fun and encouraging, they don't want to just own it and reap the cash out of it. They want to grow it. And in growing it, the infrastructure that they have provides us a lot of opportunity to co-utilize, administrative capabilities and, help us kind of set direction. Also leverage their relationships. I mean, Charlie talks about this a ton. Is like it's a relationship business, and it's very much a relationship business on the title side.
Knows everyone.
He knows everyone, and so. Talking a little bit about how we're set up at Select and the markets we're kind of in, before this relationship with Madera, I would say probably 90% of our revenue was generated from the residential side of the business, right? Okay. So just houses, buying and selling houses. Yeah. We did a little bit of commercial back then, and we were closing some of these Madera deals, which was a good pipeline of revenue at the time. But that has been kind of the pivot that we've made, not away from our residential business, but bolting on this commercial track and market. We've hired some fantastic people on the business development side and the escrow side to really facilitate and bolster that. And we're pushing super hard to grow that and talking about how we need to allocate resources. But I want to make sure and be very clear. We're killing it on the residential side. You can see, if you pay any attention at all to the housing market out there, 2020 and 2021, home prices are rising, interest rates are continuing to be low. It's a make hay while the sun's shining time right now. And we're, continuing to be really pretty blown away that, as fast and as hard as the market is pushing right now on the residential side. And it's great. And I think it creates a unique and interesting structure of a company in that you have, this fantastic cash generating residential business, you bolted on this commercial business, and those markets aren't totally aligned, right? You may have a little bit of lull on the residential side, and commercial may take a little bit of a tick. And so I think it's a unique portfolio of markets that we have to be able to kind of internally hedge, right? Like we're not anchored in just one particular. We have that optionality, and I think for the folks in the title business. That's a really good thing because it speaks to the future, and it speaks to this really stable platform that we're trying to build as a company that's going to keep everybody successful and keep growing and expanding.
Well, let's talk about the title company a little bit because I have in my life we've moved a little bit, but I've bought and I've sold 2 homes. I've bought 3.
Okay.
About the only time I ever, because I'm living in this, there you go. Okay, there's where my math comes in. Okay, so I'm in my 3rd house. Okay, about the only time and about the only experience I've ever had with a title company is when you close and you sign your name 1,000 times. And then
you read all of those documents too.
Not at all. Okay. I just assumed that the realtor who is a friend typically, I'm like, you're not, you got me, right? And so I sign my name, and at the end of it, I have a home, but there's a lot of stuff that kind of goes on in the background that I don't know about. Yep. So for all of us who don't know, what do you do?
So it's an interesting question, and again, kind of coming in from a different industry, it's a totally different ballgame here, and all that paper and all those regulations, which is what drives a lot of that. The actual, to answer the question, I guess as simply as I can, we sell an insurance product, right? Right. So basically, we are guaranteeing to the buyer, the seller, and the lender in most cases that what the buyer is buying is a valid and a valid piece of real estate, that the seller who's selling that is selling a piece of real estate that they own, and the lender is guaranteeing and financing a real property interest that is owned by the seller and will be purchased by the buyer. Right. And so what we do in selling that is that insurance. So you go buy car insurance, right? Like you're paying those premiums every month to insure your liability for driving that car, right? So what we sell is an insurance product that you pay for one time, right?
Okay.
You pay,
Yes.
there's one premium that you pay when and the seller typically pays that in the transaction for all the rest of the parties that are involved. Now they get issued a title policy, but the seller typically pays. We are ensuring that everything that happened in the past happened the way it should have,
Right.
and you actually own that piece of property,
Yes.
right? And that can happen on a raw piece of land. That can happen on a house. That can happen on a trailer home. That can happen on a, big giant multifamily apartment complex. Basically, any real property transaction that you're going to do, the vast majority of the time, somebody's going to require a title policy, an
Right.
insurance policy. So that's the big. That's what we really charge for, that
Okay.
premium, what the biggest chunk of what you pay for your closing costs
Yeah.
and that title policy. We also are the kind of center pivot, the center spoke in the entirety of that real estate transaction, right?
Okay.
So your real estate agent is out there, they're finding the houses, they're doing the deal for you to negotiate the purchase price and the conditions of that purchase or sale, but somebody's got to paper that up, right? Like you've got to have, that stack of whatever, a couple hundred documents that you sign and notarize across that to make that a valid transaction. The components of that, there's various, regulatory, and that's probably important to clarify. We're a regulated industry here in Texas by the Texas Department of Insurance. So there's a lot of components from a regulatory perspective, notices that we have to ensure are executed in order to issue the policy and facilitate that transaction. Some of that is also governed by the TREC, the Texas Real Estate Commission, requires certain documents to be
Right.
executed at closings. And then if you boil it down as simply as possible, you got to have a deed, right?
Right.
Like there's a deed
Yeah.
that you record at the county courthouse. We take care of that. That says, okay, Josh bought this property. Josh sold this property, and Spencer bought this property,
Right.
basically. So we take care of that and facilitate both the paper side of it and the money side of it too. So we move tons and tons of money through our escrow account. So in the middle of these transactions, you kind of need an agent to handle that money, because I'm not walking in and handing you, Josh, a check,
Yes.
right? To facilitate that transaction. We take that into our escrow account and we calculate based on the contract what should be distributed out to the variable parties in the transaction.
Yeah.
Lenders, we're paying off loans, we're distributing the proceeds to the seller from the buyer, we distributing funds to the agents. So we handle all that money in that process. And those are the two big things we do.
Yeah. Let's talk about, and let's transition here a little bit different to a different conversation, just simply because there are title companies everywhere. And I remember getting a chance to be with you guys just a couple months back and hearing about this like row of title companies. We see title companies when you drive around Lubbock. What makes Select Title different? Like when it comes to values, when it comes to the type of people that you have, what makes you different than someone else?
It's the people,
Yeah.
right? It's those human beings that you trust to facilitate your transaction in the best way possible. And they're, outside of, just the cost of something, we are in the people business,
Yeah.
right? That's, like I said, that's what's so critical. And you look on our website, our kind of core mantra is people first. And so that starts with, in my mind, the people that, work with Select Title, work for Select Title, day in and day out, that moves to our customers, right? And we are in a unique position as an independent title agent. So there's the big companies out there that are, publicly traded companies or large aggregated title companies that are, They typically have their own underwriting, and underwriting is the actual kind of risk product that we sell. We don't underwrite our own policies. We shop that out to the bigger companies that have a big, broad portfolio that can take on that amount of risk. And there's a lot of other regulatory concerns. It's a pain to set up an underwriting shop. But if you go with one of the big companies, they're going to write on their own paper, right?
Yeah.
So you go to Stewart, and Stewart's going to underwrite your own policy. And there are inequities in certain transactions that the underwriters will evaluate risk differently. So as an independent agent, I have 10 different underwriters that I can work with and utilize and find the right solution for that particular policy that I'm going to write. So we problem solve, right? We use those relationships to problem solve issues in the chain of title or issues, particular underwriting issues, to really provide this unique and kind of boutique-y service to our customers. And that idea of being a boutique service, allows us to tailor our offices to their particular markets they're in. And that's been one of the fun things for me, is seeing, we've got 9 offices between Harris and Fort Bend County, and there's one office actually in Fredericksburg, Texas, right now. And those little pockets and those little branches, are people that are made up from that community, right? They're people that are going to the football games with their kids, and that's what I really, that was a neat thing to find out and kind of view how much of a part of these varied communities. I have an office in River Oaks in the middle of Houston, and it looks different, because our clientele is different. But form fitting and tailoring, selling to those individual folks in that market, and recognizing the diversity across those branches, it's been really cool. And it's a cool representation of Houston in general as a total, a very diverse city, and so we've got a very diverse set of folks that work with us.
Man, I just want to thank you so much for coming in, and thank you for being a part of this conversation. Thank you for revealing a little bit more about Select Title. I look forward, we'll have you on again. We can answer some more questions and talk through some different things. To the Select Title team, man, we are proud to have you as team members, as friends, and so we're rooting for you guys at every turn. Awesome. To the rest of the Madera companies, thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll have another episode for you next week. Hope you guys have a great week.